Okay guys, I have got the engine pretty much ready to come out. That's no good. Pulling the torque converter with it's not the greatest thing. That torque converter, guys, is gonna leak everything out if we don't plug it. We'll be okay. It's just another procedure we're gonna have to do. And there you have it, people. That is the motor out. Not too bad of a job, guys. Kind of sucks, but it can be done. This is our new engine, guys, and you can look on the inside and see just how nice and clean it is. Everything looks very nice, very clean. In comparison, I'll show you our old motor. All that buildup that was on it. And the chain assembly is clean because I took that all apart multiple times and cleaned it. But I want to show you guys something you really need to look for on these Subaru motors. It's really important that you take the pans off on these because they have a fatal flaw. When these were made, they would RTV them from the factory and put way too much RTV on. So if you see squeeze out on the outside like that, if you see squeeze out on the outside, you can guarantee that it's on the inside as well. And look where it likes to go. That's right, that stuff will go and accumulate in your oil pickup tube, and then you'll lose oil pressure when it completely gets blocked off, and then your engine dies because you have no oil being drawn through the oil pickup tube. So if you're putting a new motor in, make sure you check that screen out. Very, very easy way to assure that your motor's not gonna blow up. This applies to the motors that are in the Scions and the BRZs and whatever all those two-wheel drive Subaru, Toyota love child contraptions are. Those suffer from this a lot too, so keep an eye out. So I'm gonna get this pan glued back on and we'll get ready to throw this thing back in the car. Typically when you get motors from the junkyard or from a recycler, they smash and grab. They break everything they can to get it out faster. In this instance, they broke this coolant crossover pipe right there. Not supposed to have a big old gaping crack in it like that. Do yourself a favor when you're dealing with stuff from dismantlers. Inspect everything and expect to have to replace everything and only get to use the block. Literally just the heads and the block. That's it. Because they're gonna break almost everything on it. Okay, we have everything transferred over to our new engine. We have got it back on the cherry picker, and I have got this all cleaned up in here. My mess from that torque converter. I've got a block of wood right there to pump this CVT transmission up slightly so that it's easier to get this engine in. We're gonna stab this real quick. Okay guys, we're almost there. I'm gonna get you up close and personal shots. Now you just gotta kind of support the motor a little as it goes in, keeping an eye out for all your connectors and harnesses and sensors. Okay, I'm putting a couple of bolts in, guys.
Boom. Did you see it?
Yeah.
Click in.
Yep.
That's it.
There you go, people. That means the motor is finally mated to the transmission. Now you don't want to use an impact or anything really strong to put these bolts in. You want to put them by hand. That way you can feel the resistance. If there's resistance, you got to stop. You've done something wrong. Okay, we got the radiator back in and I have connected some more connectors. If you guys need to know how to take this out, I'll put a link in the description on how to remove this radiator. It's not too bad. There's about 6-8 bolts. Get a couple of plastic covers off. You disconnect a couple of things. It's not the end of the world. So once we get this all back in, I went and I installed my ACVS solenoids down here. Put those back in, made sure they're plugged in, and torqued all the bolts that hold them in. Got these ones on this side as well. And we've made sure to connect all of our sensors up here for our oil pressure and our oil temperature. I don't know, there's 2 oil sensors right there. So 2 oil sensors. We're going to, our next step is to get in and put the torque converter bolts in. So we're gonna get on that. Okay, when you're dealing with bolts that take Loctite, you need to clean all of the old Loctite off of them. When you remove that, that helps the anaerobic sealer that you're putting back on the Loctite function correctly. We got our bench grinder over here. You just slowly clean them off like that. One at a time, we clean these and we'll go put some new Loctite on them. Once you get them all cleaned up, you'll get yourself some Loctite. I like to use orange. This is high strength removable Loctite. So it's kind of like the strength of red, but you can take it off without heating it or galling the threads up. Shake it and just put a little drop on it, about like that. You do not need much. And then we'll use a 19mm ratchet right here on the crankshaft, and make sure you're turning it clockwise. That helps avoid doing any damage to the timing chain components. You'll slowly rotate it until you get it to line up with the torque converter bolt hole right there. And I'll take my bolt and I'll really try not to drop it and get it started by hand. Now, before you tighten that one, you want to leave it slightly loose so that you can get the other bolts in. If you crank this one down first, your first one, when you go to get to your next hole, sometimes it'll be slightly off kilter and it'll be impossible to get the bolts in. So put them all in by hand and then start tightening them. Guys, if you don't have one of these and you're doing auto repairs, you should invest in one. This is just a paint pen. You can get these at most hardware stores. You can get them at metal supply places. Auto parts stores tend to have them too. These are really great. They're just a little paint pen like that. You shake it and you can put dab on something kind of like this. The reason these are so important to me is because when you're doing a big job like this, you have lots of room for errors. I mean, it's basically like building a Lego set and you can't forget one single piece. When the stakes are that high, I like to use the paint pen. Let me show you what I mean. You can see every little mark on here of what I've touched, especially those torque converter bolts. I will go through there and I will mark each one that I've torqued and then rotate to the next one and mark it, and then rotate to the next one and mark it, until I see that all of them have been marked. That way, I don't leave anything loose and I don't leave a customer stranded on the side of the road. So, get yourself a paint pen. Now that those are all torqued, we can take our cover and install it back here, like so. Make sure all of your sensors that go underneath the intake manifold are clipped in, no damage to any of the harnesses. You're also, at this time, gonna wanna go through and hook up any of your coolant hoses that run through here. This one right here is for the transmission cooler. We got our PCV valve. Make sure you don't forget that and that hose that is associated with it. There's a coolant line that goes to the throttle body right here. Make sure you don't forget that. And another cooler line right there. Don't forget that guy. Before the intake manifold goes on, make sure that you put these dividers into the engine from your other one. These are for the variable intake system. There's some flaps in the intake that allow it to basically either suck air that much or that much. So make sure those are in on both sides. Make sure your grounds are all connected, and with all that, you should be ready to put your intake manifold back in. Now when that manifold goes back in, you want to make sure that this surface right here is clean. That was the portion that the intake manifold went through, and the two studs came through this way. Make sure this is clean, and make sure your gasket is ready to go back on right here. Okay, we're under the car and we have done a bunch of work down here. We actually had thought we were filming, but we weren't. I totally spaced and didn't hit record. So you didn't see us put this Scorpion back in. This exhaust, big bad boy Scorpion Mama Jamma. But we got that back in. Make sure you tighten all your bolts for it. 2 back here, hanger there, 3 bolts on each side. Make sure you replace your gaskets on these guys. You can see our new ones up in there. Here's the old ones. Make sure you replace those. Go up in there. We've made sure our grounds are hooked back up on each side. All of our sensors are connected. Connected the 2 connectors for the fans. Connector for the oxygen sensor right there. Another connector for the oxygen sensor right there. On this side up in here, we've torqued all of our engine to transmission bolts. We're pretty much ready to put this thing down, fill it with oil, and see what we got going on. We're also gonna have to fill the transmission up because we have lost probably, we've easily lost about a quart and a half of fluid. So let's bring her down. Before your final time on the bottom, make sure you've torqued your oil pan drain plug. That's a big one. You don't want to lose that guy. On the top side, we are getting ready to throw our intake manifold back in. So we're going to need to move this, position the AC compressor up and out of the way. Do your final check, make sure that every connector is back on. Look at this right here. If I hadn't paid attention, I wouldn't have seen that guy right there. That's a vacuum line. Not like it would kill us, but make sure you check, guys. Look for every little thing. Make sure everything is accounted for. This is a guide that goes to the intake manifold. So are these. This goes to the alternator. Either to the alternate, no, this goes to another component on the underside of the intake manifold. Air intake, intake manifold. Look at that hose clamp, not on, right there. This hose clamp right here is kind of off kilter. We need to fix that one. Remember, we have this guy down here that goes to the throttle body. Before we put the intake manifold on, we're going to take the throttle body with its hoses and set it there. We have the throttle body going back on. We put new hoses. They're not the molded ones that it came with, but there's enough bend in them to get them where they need to go. They were really bulbous and starting to...
Oh, this is what they looked like. See how bulby that is?
No bueno. This guy lives about right here. It's gonna go like that. Kind of a tricky spot, so you better to replace them now while you can get to them than in the future when the intake's on top of it. There we go. There it is. You guys will thank me now if you do these right now instead of when the intake's back on. And the last one over here just goes back on this side right there. If you're having trouble getting the hose clamp down on the hose, spit on it or get yourself some dish soap.
Spit on it or spit on it?
Or get some silicone lube. Okay, that should be everything before we put this intake manifold on. Triple check that everything is reconnected. You don't want to have to pull this back apart when you fire the engine up for the first time. I want to show you guys one more thing. Here's your EGR valve right here. You want to make sure that that surface is clean. And you also want to have the gasket ready to go back in there so that when you put the studs through, the studs go through these two holes and hold the gasket in place. So that should be good to go. Before you throw the intake on, make sure that these gaskets have been replaced on the underside of the intake. We're going to clean them off real quick. They're a little dirty. And it should be ready to pop down in there. Okay. And now comes the fun little dance of getting this back in, guys. There we go. Sitting in place where it should be. Now before you get carried away and throw the bolts in, this is when you want to start doing the EGR stuff so that you've got room to kind of wiggle this and finagle it. So I showed you guys taking them out. I'm not going to show you putting them back in. It's kind of really hard to get in there and film. But you want to get that gasket in between, that spot we just mentioned, and then put your studs back in with the Torx, the e-torque, and then put your bolts back on. We have put pretty much everything back together. We just have a couple of splash shields underneath we need to put on, and we need to fill this thing up with transmission fluid, with CVT fluid before we turn it on. That way it can come up to temperature and push what it doesn't need out, and that's how you fill these things. We're gonna get in. This is how you know I used to be a Subaru dealer tech. I have the actual funnel that screws into the oil fill cap. As you guys can see right here, I like to use Wix filters. They're good quality filters. I've got some fresh oil on here. Clean that mating surface off. We're gonna put that on, get him to seat, and then do about a half turn after he seats. Maybe I like to do almost a full turn, 3/4 turn. I'd rather have it be too tight than not tight enough. Now you're probably looking at this thing and thinking, what the heck is that? This is called an airlift. This is basically a Venturi vacuum that will pull vacuum on the entire cooling system and let us vacuum fill it. Very efficient way to fill your cooling system. So check it out. I'll show you what I mean. Just take this hose end. I'm going to put it into a little container so it doesn't squirt me with any residual coolant that's going to come spraying out of here. Sneak a peek at our radiator hose over here. It is very collapsed because it has vacuum applied to it. Now as long as we can get above 25, I'm a happy guy. I let it sit there for a second, and then I will close the valve right here and get ready to use my coolant to fill this thing. So you can see I've got the valve shut and we're holding decently above 25 inches of mercury in vacuum. We're going to get the hose to suck all the coolant in now. Hook the suction hose up. It has a filter on it on one side. Just a connector to go into this. We'll get this into our Subaru blue coolant, recycled, and you can watch this slowly slurp it all in. Look at that. Before it starts sucking air, I like to turn it off and grab my next jug. I guess I'm gonna have to run to the store because we're out of Asian blue coolant, so bummer. So close to firing it up. At least it's only 3:15. Okay, friends, we're gonna do first fire up. We've got the oil in, we've got the coolant filled with the vacuum filler. We've got the coolant funnel on it to burp any air pockets out. Batteries hooked back up, keys in the ignition. Let's fire it up and see what she sounds like. I'm actually gonna do something called clear flood mode, which allows this to crank without the engine firing. That is done by flooring the gas pedal before you turn the car to the on position, and then cranking. It won't fire the injectors. Watch this. We're doing that to build engine oil pressure. I'm gonna crank it again. Now I'm gonna turn the key back off, key back on, let it sit for a little bit, then fire it up.
That was easy.
Yeah, we have a lot of oil in the exhaust that we're burning off. We had a lot of oil coming down past the valves from it being tipped over. So we do have a lot of oil that's gonna kind of burn out of it. Well, there goes the idle. Okay guys, we've got a check engine light already. Let's shut it off and pull that code, see what we got. Guys, I have a NOx sensor circuit code and I have a P0171 bank 2 system 2 lean, and it started running like dog crap. This is a little unnerving because I didn't have those before. So let's dig into this. I think we'll probably start off with that bank 2 sensor 2 NOx sensor high input. Also got to check, make sure I don't have any hoses disconnected from that intake manifold. Let's go take a look. Let me fire it up and you can see how it runs.
Still got a shock.
No, it's like a valve chatter. Guys, one thing I've seen with these junkyard motors that you get is they tend to have to sit and run for a while to get happy. You'll have lifters that stick, you'll have a little bit of rust build up on the rings of the pistons. There's just a lot that kind of goes on with them. So the more you let them sit and idle and kind of run through the paces a little, the better they get. So it's already sounding a little better as it's running. Oh, there we go. Worse than the old motor. Right there, we have a NOx sensor right there, and that one wasn't fully plugged in. My bad. So that guy I'll show you on the old engine lives about right here. That's a NOx sensor, and the thing just was half a click off. So that explains our NOx sensor fault. And I also found our system lean fault. This PCV hose right here, that PCV hose right there was disconnected. So don't forget to double, triple, and quadruple check your work, because you'll leave something. Even a pro like me does it. Let's see if this thing runs a little better. Sounds a lot better, guys. Whew, much better. Well, I was getting nervous, guys. I didn't want to have to call my customer and tell him that his new motor is worse than his old one. I've lost my $2,000 scan tool. It's like a 6 by 10 inch tablet and a little dongle. I have no clue where the heck I would have put that thing. Maybe my wife's car? We're gonna connect again. Our idle looks pretty good, guys. Connection successful. These are all confirmed codes, meaning that it saw them. Turn the car off. You don't want to clear codes with the engine running. Okay, we're gonna go in, we're gonna click clear, cleared our ECU. We're gonna go out, turn our key, and once again, we're gonna have to let that throttle, the electronic throttle, relearn itself. Oh, there we go, guys. That sounds good. We've got everything squared away. We're gonna have old man fire the motor up real quick and check this out. Oh yeah! She idles like a champ now. So much better. And if we come over to our computer, we'll scan for codes. No DTCs detected. Boom! She's fixed, I hope. So we'll do an extended road test on this guy, and then tomorrow I'll check back in with you guys. We'll make sure this thing is totally good to go. But other than that, that is how you change an engine on a 2018 Subaru Crosstrek.